Well, good morning. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town. Well, welcome, folks. You know, this has been a crazy year. Probably one of the crazier years when it comes to world events and U.S. events that I've ever seen here in my 53 years. And I've been paying attention to politics since I was 6 years old, so I was that weird little kid. I'm going to start with a quote from the Academy of Ideas. Great resource if you're into freedom, if you want to understand how totalitarianism works and how authoritarian systems work, what to do about them. They make you think, they put it in historical context, they talk a lot and bring on people that are speaking and have quotes from great thinkers that helped free the Soviet Union and a lot of their states. So, can we go ahead and run that clip?
Resist much, obey little. Once unquestioning obedience, once fully enslaved. Once fully enslaved, no nation, state, city of this earth ever afterward resumes its liberty. These were the words of caution which the great poet Walter Whitman offered to his fellow Americans. For Whitman recognized that crucial to a free and flourishing society are men and women who are willing to question and even resist authority when necessary. But today, very few of us live by the ideal espoused by Whitman. Rather, blind obedience is the norm. We have become populations of sheep, easily to be herded into the chains of tyranny. But what has led those of us in the West to largely...
So, think about that, folks. These ideas of freedom have been around for quite some time, and we can learn from history. Walt Whitman being, in a lot of ways, an icon of the left, and his poetry being an icon of the left. Yet it seems to be that the left has lost its ever-loving mind. And I'm going to give you a couple examples. The first one is from Fairfax County, Virginia, and it has to do with education. Shocking. I mean, they changed governors largely on the message of education and the ridiculousness that's happening there. You know, largely in answer to the racist race towards critical race theory, the idea that we should divide ourselves. You know, critical race theory stands at the polar opposite of Martin Luther King's dream, where we are judging each other by the content of our character rather than the color of our skin. It sees skin color and disadvantage first, and then it goes right for. It's an excuse for equity. Well, the only way to truly get equity, equality of outcomes, is through totalitarianism, to have so much control that freedom gets crushed. So, first example, Fairfax County, Virginia. There's a high school that is basically kick butt. It is one of the best in the U.S. And their principal decided that even though a whole bunch of their kids are national student of merit students, so top 3%, it's a major award, it's like a way big deal, would help you get into a better college, would make you eligible for a whole series of scholarships. When those students were Asian, and this happened about a little over 1,000 times, they're having a little trouble figuring out how many times this has happened. So they've had that many students over the last 5 years that have been absolutely awesome, kicked butt, became a top 3% in the nation student, and then she didn't think it was important to let them know, and her reasoning for it was because of equity. So these kids worked their butts off, and she decided that, well, we have to have equity, and there's other kids that are not doing as well, so we need to essentially use racism and discrimination to hold these kids down. She also didn't want to give out the awards in any sort of ceremony because that would make the other kids that didn't get it feel bad. So she's advocating for a race to the bottom, not a race to the top, not acknowledging and admiring excellence, But on the other hand, we got to be fair. Well, those kids all had an equality of opportunity to kick butt in that school. Some of them had the family structure that helped. Hint, hint. Asians tend to have a pretty strong family structure that values education, and they push their kids and they have high expectations. Good for them. Thank you. I'm glad some Americans do and wish more of us had that ethic. My other story is out of one of our fabled universities right here in California in the Bay Area. That's Stanford University. A university that used to be something that, if you went there, you should be proud. They still have a fellowship, and, for instance, Victor Davis Hanson, one of the most brilliant men locally, historian, conservative, he's out of Stanford. But Stanford has now embraced the new woke ideology. I think they've decided that the dumber you are, the more compliant you are, the more educated you are. Because they decided, and there's a whole list of terms, and you can look it up, that they're no longer acceptable. The first one I'm going to deal with is brave. You're no longer supposed to use brave because it might make somebody feel bad. Now, I see that's a human characteristic that is something to be admired. And Stanford doesn't even want you to use the word brave. And I wish I was making this up because it sounds just like BS. Like, what's wrong with me? Well, I'm only going to focus on one other term that they put out in this paper that, this is how we should speak because we should be sheep and spineless cowards. And that's what the woke is constantly trying to do, is destroy norms. As they destroy norms, just like 1984, they want you to feel unbalanced, which means you're easier to manipulate. So they also want to eliminate the term American. Yes, I really did say that. Stanford University wants to eliminate the use of the word American because it makes it seem like we're a better country, and we're not the only country in the Americas. And I think there's 46 countries, but a little over 40, a little less than 50 between North and South America. Well, I'm biased. I think that this is a better country than the rest of the Americas, particularly those hosers up in Canada run by Trudeau. But, you talk about the corruption, and we certainly have some south of the border. Well, it seems to extend all the way south of the border, all the way down to the tip of Argentina and Chile. That doesn't mean they're bad countries. I've met a lot of those people. They've immigrated here. They're good people. But why would they want to come to this place if it wasn't a better country that offered greater opportunity? So Stanford University doesn't believe in brave or American. Well, this brave American is willing to speak up and say, hey, if you donate money to Stanford, you should stop. If you go to Stanford games, you need to let them know why your season tickets aren't happening anymore, because you slimy bastards do not believe in brave Americans. How ridiculous is this? So I think overall what we've seen in the last year is the culture war, which has been going on for years and years, is coming to a head. COVID was this great opportunity for the left to seize power, to throw us off balance, to create fear, to destroy history, to say, oh, well, basically we got to burn it all down because this is an unjust country. And they don't acknowledge the good things. Heck, a Lincoln statue was torn down. If you can't stand for Lincoln, who freed the slaves, then clearly you're just somebody that doesn't believe in the American ideals. So COVID was this great opportunity. I have a quote from a pretty popular movie from Blade Runner. Quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it? That's what it's like to be a slave. If you're always worried about, oh my God, COVID's going to get me. Oh my God, this is going to get me. Oh my God, I'm a victim. And I think that that's what the progressive left, the authoritarian progressive left, has embraced, is the idea that, well, our chosen people are victims. There is an equal opportunity, even though we had a black president twice that was legally and fairly elected. Don't like him, but hey, legally and fairly elected, eloquent spokesman. His kids have more privilege than I'll ever think about having. What about Oprah Winfrey, one of the richest women in the United States? She has more privilege, but she plays the victim card. LeBron James, you know, the highly talented, whining, crying little baby basketball player. Highly talented. Got real skills. Until he starts talking, and then he talks about how he's a victim. Is he a victim because of the multi-millions of dollars that he's got? He's one of the most talented basketball players of all time. But he's got to whine about how he's oppressed. And then when there's real oppression in the country where he seems to be getting a whole bunch of his money, China, he can't say a word. He has to hide like a spineless little coward. Well, big coward, because he's a big guy, but I would say that to his face, and, you know, if he beat me down, that'd just be how it was. I'm embarrassed. He should be a beacon of intelligence and hope, and he's not. And there have been other basketball players that absolutely stand up for freedom. This guy doesn't. He whines and cries about how you're oppressed. There were some interesting surveys when they asked Democrats how many African American men they thought were killed by cops. And somewhere around 40% thought it was over 1,000 every year. Now, the number is closer to 20, not 1,000. Varies a little bit from year to year. 20% of Democrats thought it was over 10,000 black men were murdered every year by the police. Now, there's no basis in reality there. But when words don't mean things, when we are redefining, say, for instance, what a woman is, where do we stand? This has been the year of the woman, I guess. Except that we redefined what woman is. We decided that sports, we collectively, meaning the Biden administration and the hardcore left progressives, decided that in sports, if you pretend to be a woman, then you should be able to compete with women. Now, how ridiculous is that? Men and women are different. They should have equality of opportunity. But on a physical level, men are typically faster and stronger. Doesn't mean we're more intelligent. It's to say that on average, men are probably significantly dumber than women. You know, because men tend to, a larger percentage of men are near the extremes. And there's been a lot of studies about that. And a larger percentage of women are near the middle. And I think that has to do with the fact that they have to take care of kids, so you don't get as many crazy women. You get more crazy men. And if you doubt me, look at the prison population. How many women are there compared to how many men? And how many women are there for truly violent things as opposed to, say, theft crimes? It's not even in the same category. So one of the big things that happened aside from this culture war, which I'll try to weave throughout today's conversation, that happened during COVID was that government got a little bit of power, and we had 15 days to slow the spread. And, you know, I remember checking in at day 100. You hardly heard about it on the mainstream media. They just constantly talked about fear and how COVID was going to kill us. Well, it's a really bad flu. Definitely a really bad flu. Pretty easy to spread. If you're vulnerable, you had problems. But the government used misinformation. Now, what they claimed was the real information. You know, I'm talking about flip-flop, lying Fauci. Whether he's lying or just so incredibly stupid, it's hard to say. He lied before Congress. He was wrong on the effectiveness of the vaccine. You know, he started out, you can watch a video on this, where he talked about how the vaccine would be 95% effective and stopping transmission. Now, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? And then suddenly a month later, it was 75%. And then a month later, it was like, well, it's 60%. Well, then now we're down to it's effective in stopping the worst cases of lowering the severity. But that's all. So clearly, flawed vaccine, not perfect. Real problems with it. You can find those problems by looking at Germany and the equivalent of their CDC. You can find those problems by seeing what the United Kingdom, not third world countries, what they think the effectiveness of the vaccine is. But, you know, I haven't tried recently to post some of those things without commentary, but I know for a fact that Facebook would be thrilled to censor me and say that, oh, this is misinformation. Even if I'm posting something from not a third world country, what if I was to post something, say, from Sweden that took a different path? Well, I did, and I got censored. Because one of the things that came forward was, and came to light, now this started more in 2020 and probably a little before, was that fact checkers essentially are opinion people, not actually fact checkers. And they seem to be totally biased on the left. This is another part of that culture war. We'll get back to that idea. Another, shifting a little bit, inflation. That's one of the bigger things that happened during this year. The part that was insane was, here we made the complete wrong moves. We meaning the Biden administration through executive order, within the first day, shut down a couple pipelines, approved a pipeline that went through Afghanistan, so allowed that to happen. So we cut down our oil supply, said we're going to move towards green energy, but we're not there yet. And, for instance, just in the last week, because we had a pretty severe storm that shut down the country, there were large areas that lost power. And it's one thing to lose power, it's the other thing to lose heating oil. They lost heating oil. A bunch of people died. How come the mainstream media is really not talking about the Biden administration being directly responsible when they're forcing people to move towards green energy? And I do believe we can get there, though I don't think it's going to be wind and solar. I think it's going to be something else. I think it's probably going to be nuclear. But they're not getting blamed for those deaths. Now, that's kind of insane. The other thing that the Biden administration, or I should say the Brandon administration, because I have no respect, that they did was, in two different ways, they redefined what a recession was and what inflation is. So, traditionally, a recession was 2 negative quarters of growth. And they redefined that so that they could lie, much like 1984, where they control the narrative. Words don't mean things. We just redefine it, and then we expect the spineless sheep, rather than free thinkers, to go, yeah. Sit there like bobbin heads and have their heads go up and down when they tell us something. I want free thinkers. The other thing they did to redefine inflation was they looked at what happened, let's say, in March. We had a particular inflation rate. Let's pretend it was 8%. And the next month it went up, say, 0.15%. And they'd say, well, inflation only went up 0.15%. Well, wait, it's still growing at the 8% plus the 0.15%. That's the reality, but they wanted to make it look better. Now, maybe they were just confused and Biden really is in control, and that's why we hear so many lies and gibberish, because he can't keep it straight. But I'd like to believe that he has some people around him that are actually intelligent, that happen to just disagree with me. And so if he has some intelligent people around him, you're just spinning bull, buddy. Now, he's their mouthpiece. I don't see him as the intelligence center. And I want to point out that Barack Obama, when he was campaigning for the November election, he was picking out candidates and trying to get him across the finish line. He said, never underestimate Joe's ability to F things up. So he's the quiet part out loud. So even the former President Barack Obama has no faith in lying, bumbling Joe Brandon. Kind of interesting to me. So, inflation, huge part of this year. And the fact that, it all got blamed on Russia. Every opportunity, well, it's the Putin price hike. Well, no. If we had an honest mainstream media, and thank goodness that they're losing jobs, they're bleeding money. If we had an honest media, then we would hear the straight truth on that. But we're not. They just repeated. And you can go to NBC, ABC, fake news, CNN, MSNBC, and you could hear Putin price hike. Yeah, Putin price hike, Putin price hike. And they'd go, yeah, that's the news. And they never acknowledge that things Biden has done have contributed to inflation, like passing the big spending bill he did when he first came into office. Or the other big one, the one that just happened. They did the omnibus bill in, early December? Mid-December? And they're pretending like, well, if we just print more money, then people will have more money, and then there won't be inflation. Like, we could print more money, except they don't even have to print money. They just have to add some ones and zeros to a computer equation and say, yeah, there's more money in the system. But the more money there is, the more it devalues the money that's there. Again, is it bumbling Biden that's running the show? Or does he have intelligent people that are refusing to acknowledge reality? Janet Yellen, she's the head of the Fed. So that the chairman of the Fed essentially controls our money supply. She says, well, I had no idea that inflation would be, after the things we did, that inflation would be long lasting. She said, it's just, I expect it to just be a temporary blip. And then after it wasn't, oh, well, I'm just shocked that this happened. Okay, this woman has a degree in economics. How can she be that stupid? How can there be that much stupidity at the national level? So, if you're woke, essentially, if you don't agree with me, you're a racist. That's their line. Or if they can't get you on racism, then you're transphobic. If they can't get you on that, you're a woman hater. They don't want to have any discussion. That means if you want to have no discussion and you're willing to call names at the first thing, that would mean you're an authoritarian. So not only is that authoritarian, but that is shown through censorship. We're going to go ahead and take a break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town. Wow, I got on a roll and I didn't even realize it was that far beyond the regular break. We're going to come back with Tom McDonald. Time, he said a whole lot there. And he puts it together in a fun, entertaining way. So even if you're not into rap, I encourage you to look at some of Tom McDonald's stuff. It's a way to bridge a gap between an older and a younger generation. And he's moving the culture, moving our cause along, because he's not a conservative by any means, but he believes in freedom. He believes in basic American values. Something interesting. He's Canadian, and yet he's fighting for American values and American freedom. Now, I'm happy that he's joined the fight, but Why are so few Americans? And I say so few because so many of us, I think, actually believe, and we are a center-right country. But we believe that, but we don't get out and vote. We're just spoiled. Well, here's somebody from another country that realizes what a special thing we have. And because of that, he's engaged in the culture war. Now, this is the largest independent music artist in the world, meaning he doesn't have a record label. He does it all on his own. He just does his own distribution. He puts it all on his own social media. Heck, I've seen videos of where he takes orders, and he and his family, and I guess they hire some help a little bit now because he's gotten so big, they do the distribution of their albums. They mail it off rather than just having a record label and a company take care of it. That's kind of cool. Even though he's Canadian, that's an American success story. That's awesome. We need more of those because those are moments of hope. You know, I think that woke ultimately fails when we use things like Brave American, which, strangely enough, Stanford University doesn't want. We stand up. When you refuse to comply. So I want to highlight some of the failures that have happened with woke culture. Netflix, down by 40%. They tried to sexualize little girls with a show called Cuties that was completely inappropriate. And it's interesting that I'm sure there are people on the left, though they're pretty silent. Their silence is almost deafening, that stand against sexualizing children. I'm sure there are. Why aren't they speaking up? Maybe you should try that word bravery. Oh, I know why. Because you don't want to be counseled by the rest of the left, by the authoritarians that seem to have captured all of the energy and voice of the left. You know, to have a balanced country, even though I'm very much on the right, the left does serve a purpose. And it's not just for the right to beat up on, but to create new ideas. But sometimes that's needed. The left also serves a purpose to build new systems. Sometimes that's needed. Interestingly enough, though, what the left wants this time, and the heroes they look to, seem to be Mao and Stalin, Karl Marx. You know, I would say that there's not very much difference between what Stalin did and how he oppressed his people and what somebody that they go, oh, no, we can't have Hitler. We can have Stalin, who killed millions, but we can't have Hitler that killed millions. I would say that on the political spectrum, they're both authoritarians, and there's a huge amount of similarities. So, awesome that Netflix, they went woke, and they haven't gone broke, but they've paid a price. We need to continue finding places where we can make these woke leftist idiots pay a price. Another big one, Disney. Disney decided that they needed to jump in, and they had a movie that featured a gay character. Now, I don't really object to a movie that features a gay character. I object to the fact that they're shoving it down my throat. They're telling me who I should be, rather than going, you know, it's a free country. Maybe we shouldn't, in a cartoon, bring in sex. Maybe we should kind of limit that. They also took on Ron DeSantis in Florida, and they decided on what they labeled the Don't Say Gay bill. And really what that bill was a bill that said, hey, teachers, you're not going to talk to students about sex from kindergarten through the third grade. That maybe these kids should have a level of maturity before we introduce these ideas, and it should be handled at home before then. I actually read the bill. Pretty simple bill. Not pages and pages and pages like our recent omnibus that was 4,000 pages and however many pounds. But a pretty simple bill, and Disney decided, oh no, we need to go the woke route on this. Well, Disney's down the lowest it's been in the last 10 years. In other words, their stock price is lower than it was 10 years ago. And they're also down by a huge percentage. Go woke, go broke. To all of my conservative friends that are still going to Disneyland, still giving them money, I have sympathy if you have kids that want to go. But could you find an alternative? Because I think that Disney needs to feel the pain. So they went woke, went broke. Now, got two more examples. CNN Plus, fake news. I think that's the plus. It's CNN, and then they were acknowledging the plus is CNN plus fake news. You know that they launched that as an online private service as a way to get your news, and you'd get additional stuff over what blathers on the fake news CNN channel. So I guess if you wanted to be indoctrinated, this was a way to be fully indoctrinated. You get extra indoctrination. Now, you would have thought that'd be a success, right? But CNN, because of the fact that they're fake news and they continually lie, and the only reason that they did well was because they focused on Donald Trump, because Donald Trump got views and got interest. As soon as Donald Trump wasn't the center to what was going on, they fell off a cliff. Now, they were still way behind Fox News, but they fell off a cliff as far as ratings, and now their bigger shows get 500,000 views. I know all kinds of podcasters that get 500,000 views outside of the fake news, CNN fake news media. Well, the cool thing with CNN Plus was not only that it folded, but only 10,000 of those loyal leftists were willing to pay for fake news. You realize they had just over 10,000 people that were signed up. And that's why it folded, because that wasn't enough for them to make it. That is an awesome thing that happened in our culture war. My final example, AOC, Ocasio-Cortez, the most woke, gibbering fool that I think the left has as their representative, and she seems to have a lot of power. If you watch when Congress, whether it's the House or the Senate, when they're putting out a major announcement and you have either Nancy Pelosi, thank goodness the witch is gone, or soon will be, just give us a couple more days, or you have Chuck Schumer, lying, slimy career politician, much like Biden. Smarter, though. But, the gum under this table that I'm sitting at is smarter than Biden, I think. So you've got AOC. She's there. They think it's important that she stands there. She represents a portion of the left that I think they want cheap. They're authoritarians. They talk about freedom, but only the freedom they want. Well, she launched a climate movie. Something to lecture us about how we should be, and, we need to worry about climate, and we need to whine, and we need to cry, and we need to all embrace the woke agenda. By the way, if she wasn't attractive, how many people would pay attention? I bet it'd be different. Anyway, so she launched this. It went in 180 theaters. 120 theaters. 83% from critics. So the professional class thought it was the greatest movie, 83%. Launched on 120 screens nationwide. It grossed $10,000. On 120 screens, that's $80 per theater on opening weekend that went to see this clearly winner movie. Well, AOC is the epitome of woke, and it looks like that movie went broke. There's something awesome. I lost my notes. Why is corporate journalism rushing to defend the state instead of the people? Now, that's a quote that just came out. That was tweeted out by Elon Musk. So think about that. Why is corporate journalism, so fake news, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, ABC, all of these traditional sources, why are they rushing to defend the state instead of the people? The legacy media should worry about its reputation. We've only just begun. That's also a quote from Elon Musk. I heard somebody on Fox News, and I cannot attribute this quote to the right person. This is the media's silence of the lambs. Before we get to what I think is the biggest story of the year, which is Twitter and the censorship, I want to talk about the